Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for that. I thought I was here alone. I'm here at Riverbend all alone. As you can see behind me, the trees are turning green. And as you all know, Riverbend is open and hope you guys can still come visit, socially distanced as appropriate, of course. I think everyone heard the governor extended the closure another couple of weeks today. So we're in this mode. I'm really excited to have all of you here. I can't believe we had over 100 people sign up. I'm blown away. I thought we'd have maybe 10. So incredible, and it's great to see all of you in air quotes and all of your interest here. I really miss everybody and really miss our normal way of business. It's been a really tough time, and I really hope you and your families are doing great. And we're thinking of you all the time and really looking forward to when we can get together again. Today, we're really going to talk about, I think, good things, or try to, and really just update you on what's going on and answer any of your questions. But I do want to impose upon everybody a little bit of business. We're going to have the quickest annual meeting ever. Our bylaws call for us to do 2 things every year by May. Although the governor and the legislature said we don't have to do these this year, we thought we're up for it and we can try. So according to our bylaws, you guys, our members, have control of the organization in 2 important ways. Our financial report, and you get to elect your leaders every year. So without further ado, let's get this over with and get our business done, and then we can move on to bigger and better things. So last year, you all received this financial report for our finances last year, 2019, a few weeks ago in the mail. And you can see we had a great year. In fact, the biggest year ever. We increased revenue higher than ever before. Our membership reached a new high, and we just really had a great year, and that's all because of you guys. So the 100 of you on this call, just really thank you, and I'm proud, big year for everybody. But we do have to take a vote to accept the financial report. So Rachel, if you'd unmute people, if I could possibly get a motion from the floor to accept the report.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I declare it passed by a voice vote.
Aye.
So the next slide, Rachel. So this is my favorite part of our annual meeting when we get to announce our leadership. For those of you who don't know, the association has 2-year terms for our board members. So every year, about half of our board cycles on and off, and we get to elect new board members. Here's the board slate, and I'm pleased to announce our newest board member, Lauren Fitzgerald from Topsfield. Hey, Lauren, thank you. And you can see on the slate here our returning board members and our new officers. This year, I'm really excited and proud to announce our new president, Susie Winthrop from Ipswich. And then our other officers, Ken McNulty from Linfield, Suzanne Sullivan from Wilmington, and Dave Combe of Manchester, our secretary. So with that, I'm going to ask Rachel to unmute again. And could we get a motion to accept this year's board slate?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations to everybody, and thank you. I couldn't be more proud to have such incredible bosses here at your association. It's a top-notch board, and all you members should be proud of these great volunteers who step up for you and work for our river.
Don't we vote on a treasurer, Wayne?
Oh, Nat, that's a great catch. I neglected, it's off the bottom of this slate here. So our treasurer is Brian Tinger, who's returning. So Brian lives in Wenham. So Brian, thank you for your role, and I think we should redo the vote. Nat, thank you for catching that.
You're
we
welcome.
have another motion to accept Brian as our treasurer.
Here, second.
A second. All those in favor? Aye. Thanks for that, Nat.
Right on.
Next slide, Rachel. But I thought we would just do a few slides to prime the pump and also show you an exciting new video we've been working on. The first thing, obviously, is our new way of life that all of us have to go through right now. The COVID pandemic has affected your association as much as it has everybody else. I'm really glad to report, though, that I don't think here in the office we've missed a beat. Folks are working remotely and doing very well. We're working really hard on your behalf, and right now it's really still business as usual in terms of operating your association. We are responding, though, very strongly to the pandemic. We are working with the Finance Committee and the Board of Directors on a series of contingency plans. Like any business, the future is very uncertain, and we're working out various scenarios. We think we're in really good shape for the short term. We applied for and received the PPP loan as part of the Federal CARES Act, so we're really excited to have that buffer over the future. And like I said, we're going to be working on various scenarios. We think we're in good shape for the short term, but as the year rolls out, we'll be working with you and communicating with you on our uncertain future. But again, I'm happy to report business as usual for the short term, and we'll see how things roll out. But it's because of you and our strong membership and your continued support that allows us to keep working for you on your behalf. So without further ado on the COVID situation, I'll just prompt a couple of highlights and then we'll answer some questions. So next slide, Rachel. So we're going to talk a little bit about updates in terms of our various programs. Probably, or perhaps our most important program is our advocacy work. Ipswich River Watershed Association is first and foremost an advocacy organization. We advocate for the river. Increasingly, we've been working with our state legislative delegation. This is a great photo from last year's legislative breakfast. Of course, we couldn't really consider one this year. And the kids in the photo are great high schoolers from Wilmington who really advocate for the river as much as any of our schools. And we're really working at the State House on important legislation for the river. And the big thing this year, as you'll hear about, is water conservation and the new drought legislation that's rolling out across the state. Next slide. Well, perhaps our biggest initiative this year is our net zero policy. We've been talking about this ever since the devastating drought 2 years ago. What we've devised and worked with the town of Ipswich and other towns is this net zero water use policy because of the drought, but also the fact that the state has established a safe yield for the river, meaning no more water can come out of the river ever. That means our cities and towns have to live within the existing allocations. In order to accommodate new growth and development for the next decade or century even, we have to reduce our water use. And we feel that's possible. And in the coming weeks, you'll see a whole series of tools we're going to roll out across the watershed to show every one of our cities and towns how this is possible. Through the model in Ipswich, we determined by reducing their water use just 14% will allow them to keep within their existing water use for the next 100 years. So it can be done. It's going to take all of us to work together. But again, look for more on this in the next year. Next slide. So one of our newest programs is what we call community services. This was headed up really ably and who founded it by Kristen Grubbs, who moved on to be the planner for the town of Ipswich. And you all heard our replacement, Patrick Lynch, has rolled up his sleeve to take over for Kristen. And we basically are really trying to use the cities and towns and our improving relationships with them to work on behalf of the river. My favorite tagline is the cities and towns literally control the fate of the river. And so those relationships are really critical. And what we're offering is our help to things that the cities and towns have to do anyway in the water realm. One of the things we're all working on, as are most of you, are the new state program called the MVP program, highlighted here, which is the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, which is designed to increase the resiliency of our cities and towns. And thankfully, the Commonwealth is using green infrastructure to lead that program, which is right up our alley. So we're working to get our projects to increase the resiliency of the river, also to help the cities and towns. So we're really excited about this program. Even more recently in the crisis, the federal government as well as the state government are looking in terms of stimulus, in terms of increasing community resiliency. So we feel we're really well prepared to help cities and towns as we roll this out together. Next slide. One of our more exciting projects, because it results in really on-the-ground projects, is our restoration and resiliency work. So Caitlin Shaw heads this up, and you've been all hearing all about restoring connectivity, which is a technical term for flow, really connecting the river to the tributaries to the streams for migratory species, both terrestrial and aquatic organisms. We've recently re-inventoried every single one of these. We have about 600 in the Ipswich River.
Wow.
And about 70 dams, 500 bridges, and each one of these has been evaluated, excuse me, and preliminary designs. So we're working with the owners on these to get as many of these done this year. And we'll show a little video at the end about our more exciting projects. Rachel. Science and monitoring program is probably our longest running program at the watershed, head up ably by Ryan O'Donnell, who you see here in the slide. This year, we want to do a strategic planning process for our science and monitoring program, Riverwatch. This is the one program that I would say has been most affected by the crisis. And for you Riverwatch monitors, all 50 of you out there, and I know many of you are on the call, we had to unfortunately not monitor in March and April. And Ryan's working really hard with you all to get going in May. So we are going to restart the program in the next couple of weeks. Next slide. And then finally, our fifth program is outreach and education, which Rachel heads up ably. We, this year, obviously had to cancel most of our in-person events, but we're trying more and more virtual meetings like this, just like most organizations are. We're really sad to cancel this year's lineup, at least for the spring. We had a really, really cool and fun series of events that you hopefully saw on our event calendar around the themes for the year. We're still working on converting them to being virtual. Keep in touch with us on our Facebook page and our newsletters, and hopefully in the not too distant future we can get back on track normal. But I want to highlight a couple of these projects that we're really excited about this year in particular. Rachel. So you've all been hearing about this project for a couple of years now. We received a large grant from the Department of Conservation and Recreation to update all of the 20+ landings up and down the watershed from Wilmington all the way to the ocean this year. And we're calling it the Ipswich River Water Trail because paddling routes across the country are now being called water trails. And so we're getting with the times by calling it the Ipswich River Water Trail. Every single landing is going to be updated and upgraded as part of this project. We've produced a new paddling guide, which is our most popular publication, with pretty cool waterproof paper this time, unlike last time around for those of you who tried to bring them out on your boats. We're doing consistent kiosks all up and down the watershed. We're fixing all of the kiosks, installing 4 brand new kiosks, and developing a river wardens program to monitor the entire stretch of the river all throughout the season so we can keep track of blowdowns, trash, sources of pollution, all of those things that are really important to paddling. And then we're marketing this. Many of you know probably the biggest attribute of our river is it's a great paddling destination. 4 million people live within an hour of our river, and it's the #1 paddling destination on the whole North Shore. And by upgrading all of our water trail work and landings, we hope to make it a better resource for the future. And I know it's really been used a lot this spring during the closure. I've heard from many of you paddling. I've paddled more than I ever have this spring. So one word for all of you, get out on the river and take advantage of the new improved water trail. Rachel. We've been really increasing the amount of work we've been able to invest in restoration. So restoration are really our on-the-ground projects, removing dams, fixing culverts, improving water quality, reducing water withdrawals. All of those fall under the moniker of restoration. But what we really realized during the drought of 2 years ago is we really have to increase the pace of our work. With climate change and all of the increasing frequency with floods and droughts that are predicted, we need to really make the river more resilient than ever. And so we're really trying to increase the pace. This project we're super excited about, which is a comprehensive sub-watershed project called the Howlett Brook Restoration Project, where we want to do all of parts of our mission all at once in a big way in one sub-watershed, and to develop a model so we can increase the pace of our work and hopefully roll this out sub-watershed by sub-watershed across the basin. I show these two species of fish, river herring and brook trout, because they're really the canary in the coal mine. And if aquatic habitats support these two species, that means they're as healthy as they can be. So that's the target. If we can get brook trout back and river herring back, we'll know we're successful. So the whole restoration effort is designed around getting these two species back to the Howlett Brook watershed, which is in 3 communities, Topsfield, Boxford, and Ipswich. And we want to address all of the dams, all of the 60 culverts in that watershed, improve water quality, decrease water withdrawals, reduce water temperature because trout need cool water. Howlett Brook is one of the 2 designated cold water fisheries in the Ipswich River watershed. And through this 3-year project, we hope to demonstrate in a big way how this work can be replicated across the watershed. So we're really super excited about this project in particular. And then last slide, Rachel. Before we turn it over to you guys and get into the chat part of the program, everyone's been really talking about our signature event. This is our 5th year for the paddle-a-thon we hold every Father's Day weekend. We had a huge event planned for our 5th anniversary. Unfortunately, with the virus, we've been having to put things on hold a little bit to see how it unfolds. Our paddle-a-thon committee, which consists of many of you on the call, has been working really hard to come up with various scenarios. And as of now, we still hope to have an event of some kind. We definitely will incorporate some virtual aspects, but this is the one event that perhaps can be amenable to social distancing. So we're working really hard to hopefully salvage this event, and we'll have an announcement very soon and hopefully open up registration, because the governor's order today, which extended the closure for a couple more weeks, we think the timing might work to do a safe, socially distant and appropriate event, and really maybe celebrate getting back to some semblance of normalcy. So we think this will be a big boost for you guys and certainly for the staff. So we're trying to be nimble. We haven't confirmed whether or not we're going to do it yet, but we're still planning as if we can. So fingers crossed. And before we turn it over to questions, we're really excited to talk about one of our big restoration projects, the removal of the 2 main stem dams in the river, which you've been hearing about for years. This year, we think we're really close. We just filed permits with the Hamilton Conservation Commission, the Middleton Conservation Commission, to finally remove the Bostic Dam, which we hope will progress rapidly. And we're finalizing plans at the Ipswich Mills Dam. And Caitlin Shaw, our restoration specialist, worked on this great new video to hopefully get the community members to learn about this project and hopefully gain some public support. Ipswich owns the dam, for those of you who don't live in town, and so we really need to make it a community project. Even today, there's contractors out there working and investigating the mitigation that was referred to in the video. So we could have some exciting new news in the coming days. And as you saw, the new town manager in Ipswich is a real strong advocate. So we're super excited about it. But we're going to need all of you when the time comes to help convince the community that this is a good idea. So with that, I thought we'd maybe start some questions. As Rachel said at the beginning, some of you already submitted questions up ahead of time. Some of you have submitted some in the chat. So I think we're going to read those first and then open it up to everybody else. You guys up for that? Excellent. So Rachel.
Okay, so we had a few questions submitted ahead of time, as you said. So I'll start with, in no particular order, what is happening with the Elm Street development?
Oh, that's a very good question. For those of you who don't know, there are at least three, maybe four actually, 40B projects slated for the banks of the river right now. And believe it or not, the developers are using this quiet time to try to fast pace things. So we're paying very close attention to them. This one on, did you say Elm Street?
Yes.
So this is the big one in North Reading, over 200 units right on the bank of the river near the old Thompson Country Club. The town has appealed, as has the neighbors. So right now the project's on hold, and it's probably going to be a year to 18 months for that appeals process to take place. So we're sort of in a holding pattern, but we're paying very close attention to that project, as you can imagine, because the sewage system especially is going to be right on the banks of the river. So if that were to fail, it could be pretty devastating to the river.
Okay, we also have, how likely is it that the dams will be removed from the Ipswich River? I think this is referring particularly to the Willowdale Dam, which is privately owned.
Yeah, so as you know, there are three main stem dams on the river. We've been talking about two of them for years now, it seems. On average, a dam takes at least a decade from start to finish to be removed. Both of these are pushing the decade, so it's about ripe in dam removal business. As I said earlier, South Middleton is on track to get permitted this year. We don't foresee any major hurdles there. The dam owner is very motivated. We already talked a lot about Ipswich. If we get some good news at the adjoining mill buildings, that project could be moving ahead fairly soon. The third dam is the Willowdale Dam, which is owned by the Foote family. The Foote family views the dam as important to their family and their business, so there are no plans to remove it. However, I'm pleased to report a new state-of-the-art fish ladder is set to be installed there this year. And so, presuming Ipswich Mills moves ahead, that'll be the first dam that fish encounter when returning from the sea. So that new fish ladder will be very important. So for now, that dam is likely to remain, but hopefully at some point someday that one too can come out, because that dam and that fishway is really important for the Howlett Brook restoration project I referenced earlier, because it is just above that dam.
Okay, another question that came up ahead of time was, what regulations govern clearing trees, blocking, or obstructing canoes?
Yeah, so woody debris in a river is really challenging for paddling, and it can actually be dangerous, as those of you who saw the news a few weeks ago in Topsfield when some paddlers went under during high flows and cold water, which is a very, very dangerous situation. That term, woody debris, is actually a technical term, and it's actually good for a river. It's natural, and the state actually encourages one to leave as much woody debris in the river as possible. It provides nutrients. Most importantly, it provides cover and shade for cold water fluvial species, so that woody debris is critical to the ecology. However, we advocate, consistent with the state policy, for very careful, judicious pruning if possible, but to leave the wood in the water and just create enough path for things to be safe and for paddling to occur. It does take permits though, and the Water Trail program, one of its deliverables is to develop a river wardens program that I mentioned that Rachel runs, and several of you on the call are river wardens, and that's going to be an army of people out there that'll help deal with the woody debris challenge in a legal way. So we're trying to address the issue on a river-wide basis to stay within the regulations, but also make paddling safe. Great question.
Okay. Someone's testing my ability to pronounce Latin here. All right. They live up on Great Neck, and they've been noticing many more midges, diptera, or no, I'm not going to even try. So wondering what they are, and it seems like there's more than there have been in the past. Lots of range of sizes. And do you know why that might be? And are you seeing them on the freshwater sections of the river?
Long question, and we could talk all day. And I too live on the neck and have noticed the same. So they're much different freshwater and saltwater species of midges. The midges on the neck that are really bothersome are saltwater species. They reproduce on the surface of the marsh. They're really separate from the midges we have in freshwater. They have increased. We really don't know what's going on, why that's the case, but there is some imbalance. On the other hand, in freshwater, due to the floods and the drought and the increasing temperatures, our insect population has been declining. So the midges that are freshwater are actually in decline and are less prevalent, for those of you maybe have noticed. We are pleased, and due to Ryan's work on our Riverwatch program, that the invertebrates, so these are the larval form of insects that live in the water, and particularly in riffles, are rebounding pretty nicely after the devastating drought in 2016. So that's a good sign. So long story short, we don't know, but there's a big difference between salt and freshwater midges.
Okay, so that's all the questions I had submitted ahead of time. So going to the chat, and people have been joining kind of throughout the presentation. So you covered this, Wayne, but we can recover it. Best practices implementation and new planning for 2020.
Yeah, so gave you a lot of highlights on that. It's really to just, as I said, really focus a lot of our work onto what's that resiliency term that you've all heard, and that's really apropos with the health crisis we're going through right now. With the increasing challenges of the river, we're really trying to make it as healthy and strong and resilient to future change as possible. And to do that, we need to increase the pace of our work. So more on the ground projects, more planning, reduce water withdrawals, which has always been our big issue, and to try to just, with all of you, and to get more and more partners involved in this work, just really try to leverage what we do to have more impact.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also say that, silver lining, building up our video library is an upside of all of this. So we're definitely going to be fleshing that out, which is a great resource for us to both help other organizations educate people by providing content that they can then use, which helps spread the word about us, of course, but also helping out our partners like schools who are definitely having to struggle with getting content for kids that they can access remotely, and certainly all the parents that are suddenly filling in as teachers to their surprise, and also creating static things that we can use for education programs and just general outreach. So we're trying to stay positive and keep people engaged, and luckily it's a very interesting time to go outside, and it's a good time to go out in small groups so that you can sneak up on wildlife because it's all distracted with other things other than us. So hopefully we also see a nice bit of water coming into our river this year, not too much, but we don't want drought conditions, and we've had some nice consistent rains lately, so that's what we like to see in spring, but also some nice paddling days.
Well said, outreach manager.
We have another question here from Peter Dorsey, and it says, how will tidal changes influence the ability to paddle the river after the Ipswich Mills Dam is removed?
It's a great question. The feasibility study that Caitlin referenced in the video that was finalized last year really spent a lot of time talking about the impact of the tide, both the salinity and the water levels, quite a bit. So we have a model that came out of that, so we can predict the future tidal level through the entire range from the dam upstream to the length of impact, which really goes up to about the railroad bridge. So that mile will become tidal should the dam be removed. At Riverbend, where I am, the tide will only go up about an inch or two, and then it will go up about 3 to 4 feet at the dam location. And then it's relative, of course, to freshwater flow. As the tide comes in, it will back up the river. and vice versa. As the tide goes out, it will allow the flows to go out. So it'll be quite tidal. It'll be much like it is downtown below the dam. For those of you, I see Mark Hodgkin on the call, where he lives down by County Street Bridge. That's about what it will look like, but it will quickly turn into a freshwater river. So above the railroad bridge, for those of you who paddle from Riverbend, that'll be the natural state. That's what the river will look like between Riverbend and the dam downtown. It'll just go up and down. However, the salt water we don't feel will actually go beyond the dam site. Salt water is heavy and will sink. And there's also a natural bedrock ledge that the dam was built upon. So we don't think salt water will come up any higher than it does now. It'll just be the backed up fresh water that'll go up and down.
Okay, Martha Stevenson would like you to touch upon the major Supreme Court decision from last week about clean water.
That's a great one, Martha. As many of you know, certainly you longtime members, water withdrawals is a real challenge in our river. It's our biggest challenge. 360,000 people and businesses drink from it every day. It's out of balance. That's just too much water coming out. And of that withdrawal, you've always heard that groundwater in particular is the bigger of the two challenges, because that's withdrawn all year round, continually, particularly in the summertime when there's the least amount of water available. And so the groundwater surface water connection is something we talk about all the time. And we've been looking for laws and legal avenues to address that issue, including the Clean Water Act, which regulates surface waters. But the victory that Martha references was out of a court case in Hawaii, believe it or not. And they determined, the Supreme Court, yes, the current Supreme Court voted with a strong majority that groundwater can be regulated under the Clean Water Act, which really could be a game changer. While it was specific to water quality and pollution, we feel it might have ramifications on the water withdrawal issue as well. So we're really excited about that landmark victory.
Okay, and Christina would like you to discuss, you said that you saw more people on the river lately, and she'd like to know if that's more than past years, more than average, and have you noticed an impact to the river animals and birds?
That's a great question, Christina. All of this is anecdotal. We don't take inventories or measure paddlers, but I think it's just observational. And many of you have reported quite a few people getting out in the river. I know many of our board members and our members are getting out with their family members in particular, because everyone's cooped up together, but family members can socialize, and social distancing doesn't apply to individual family members. So what I've seen mostly are families, which is dramatically different than what we usually see. Fathers and daughters, husbands and wives, you name it. That's been really increased. In terms of numbers, it's hard to say, but certainly the demographics have increased. And the problem is we've had such a lousy weather spring. It's been cold and rainy, but on those nice days, I would say definitely, anecdotally, there's been a big increase in paddling. In terms of wildlife disturbance, those of you who are regular paddlers know the big wildlife we always see are the painted turtles, particularly in the spring when they're basking, and they tend to spook with all this traffic. Although a lot of our turtles adapt to paddling if you don't get too close, but it is an actual concern. A lot of people are talking about all the people that are out in the woods and the disturbance to wildlife. So it's something that is a concern. Thankfully, the weather and the fact that you only paddle during the height of the day typically still leaves the bulk of the day to wildlife, so it's probably not a huge issue, but it's definitely something to be concerned about if it gets too much.
Okay, Carol says she'd like to talk about Hawaii's decision, which formalized the preferred method for determining functional equivalence. And that's the method to determine whether or not there is a direct discharge to surface water from groundwater, and that the decision could potentially be applied based on functional equivalency to water withdrawals.
Yeah, so that's continuing on Martha's question. Great question, Carol, and that's what I love so much about our members. They really are technical folks and really dive into the details. Yeah, so the functional equivalence language, which the Supreme Court actually supported in their decision, means it has to be a fairly direct impact, but that's very easy to prove with water withdrawals, thankfully. So we think it could be pretty significant. The one challenge, though, Carol, is that the Clean Water Act is primarily focused on water pollution and water quality, not quantity. So it's going to be hard to make that connection directly, but it does open an avenue of argument, we think, to the water withdrawal issue as well. But it's going to still have to be indirect because Clean Water Act is really focused on contaminants and pollution.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions in the chat. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, absolutely. I'm opening it up to everyone now because I know some people have a hard time accessing the chat if they're on a different device, and some of you are on the phone. So I'm going to unmute everyone and open it up more generally to questions.
Yeah, this Holger Luther. Go ahead. Anybody else?
Okay.
Holger, go ahead.
If you have a question, shout it out.
Holger, can you hear us?
Well, I thought somebody else was asking.
Go ahead, Holger, you're on.
The question can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. What I want to know about the zero net withdrawals proposal of yours. Does would that include the Beverly Salem Waterworks, which was founded in 1913 and maybe grandfathered to everything?
Yeah, so we're looking, Holger, to have all cities and towns adopt it, or all water users. It's a voluntary program. There's nothing in regulations that can mandate this. What we're really focusing on is providing the tools to make it happen and the technical support to allow its adoption. Because once towns realize that they can't take any more water, which is slowly sinking in, they're really going to have to start looking for avenues to reduce water consumption to stay under their legal limits, including Beverly Salem. So our approach is education and providing the means and the tools to that end.
This guy had a shot.
Anybody else?
Yeah, great.
I wonder if people from Peabody are aware that the city of Peabody rejected an opportunity to acquire water from the MWRA, which would have actually been done without the buy-in costs that are usually charged to new withdrawals from the MWRA. They didn't go ahead with it, but I think that might be something that if we focus on people in Peabody, that we might build some impetus to get the town to reconsider that decision.
Yeah, Carrie, that was, in my mind, the best opportunity we've had in years to significantly change the water withdrawal problem in the river. Had Peabody converted to MWRA like Reading did, it would allow all the towns around it, including Winfield, Danvers, Middleton, to get water from the Quabbin as well. And so we're really trying to work on the ground to try to get them to reconsider that decision before they double down on the river.
Can I ask a question?
Diane.
Yep, go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, why did they do that in the city of Peabody? I live near Peabody, I don't know.
It was just dollars and cents. They hired a new water director who changed their mind internally. The citizenry wasn't involved at all. It was just that person and the mayor. They said it would be cheaper in the long term to stay on the river.
Don't they have to go through some kind of state requirement or something to just arbitrate, say, well, I want to take the water from the Ipswich River instead of paying a little more?
No, Diane, that's the quandary we're in and why this problem
Okay.
has been with
Okay.
us for so long. When the law was passed, they grandfathered existing uses at that time. So
Okay.
anyone who was on the river in 1986, when the law was implemented,
Okay.
gets to keep their allocation in
Oh.
perpetuity. And Peabody, you know, is living within that same amount.
Okay. Thank
If
you.
I can just point out one thing regarding the question earlier about the Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act, Section 101G, exempts state water allocation decisions from the Clean Water Act. So in order for us to be able to really focus on the Clean Water Act, it would need to focus on the fact that during the low flow scenarios, which happen, you know, all too often, obviously, on the Ipswich River, reduces the ability of the river to be able to take in any pollutants. So to focus on that aspect would still be possible.
Yeah.
Good point.
Carol adds another question, Wayne. Would a local model ordinance work to facilitate the net zero participation for towns?
That's a great question, Carol. The whole structure depends largely on that local ordinance. And so what that does is make water use decisions a town-wide issue rather than just the water department. And so the ordinance requires any new development to calculate your water use and then offset it. And what we're providing is that model bylaw and then all of the tools to offset that new water demand. So yeah, the bylaw is central to the whole structure of the program.
I have a question.
Sure, Jerry, go right ahead.
That new development that they're planning in North Reading, where are they planning on drawing their water from?
Well, one of the bits of good news we've had in the last year is that the town of Reading is proposing and has signed all the documents and committed contractually to get their water from the Merrimack River. And so they're due this year, in fact, to switch from the Ipswich to the Merrimack. So in that regard, that new development in theory won't affect the water quantity of the Ipswich. We're most concerned with the water quality of the
Right.
waste.
I agree.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a question, Richard.
Great. Yep, Richard, go ahead.
Wayne, remind us where we are with the Ipswich Dam. I know we had some good news and things look good there, but tell us what the status is and what's next.
Yeah, so as you saw in the video, we're still, we've got one issue at the EBSCO mill building next to the dam. The study identified the term you may have heard in the video of compressible soils. They might have put soft organic soils under the building when they built it. And if those were to dry out, the building could settle by an inch or two. And so we need to investigate whether or not those soils are under that building. And that's the analysis that's happening as I speak today. So hopefully we'll get some results there. And if we can address that issue, then it's just simply a matter of convincing the town of Ipswich to move ahead.
Wow. I thought there was some other prior objection by EBSCO, something to do with, I don't know. Am I wrong? That there was
another issue. It was suspected that the building was built on wood piles.
Right.
The feasibility study determined, at least for the main foundation, that it's a standard traditional foundation and there's no wood. There could be wood on the interior columns, and that study that's going on today is also looking at that issue.
Great.
And again, we'll need all of you to help push this project along, so stay tuned.
Sounds like the town manager is a pretty good guy.
So far, so good.
Okay. May I just say, I'm now on the select board in town, and I think it would be beneficial for the select board to hear from people about the need to remove the dam. We have heard from at least some people arguing against removal. I hope that we'll also hear from people arguing for removal.
What would be the best timing for that? When will there be a decision point?
Well, it's not entirely clear. I mean, there have been some discussions at select board meetings regarding the proposed dam removal, but we're now into a new grant scenario. So until that's resolved, I don't think there'll be a next stage decision.
I would add, Carrie, to Richard's question, I think both now and then. So don't hold off. Don't hold off now. The naysayers are speaking out all the time, and the select board are hearing from them. It's the proponents they're not hearing from. So talk to them now and talk to them when the time's right or better.
Good
And I'll
advice.
say that we get emails on this sort of subject fairly regularly.
What are the objections for not removing it?
Dare I say, if I could put it in fairly simplistic terms, one series of comments that we received was, like the view of the backwater. And I responded to that saying, is it such a big deal that there'll be a tidal movement upstream twice a day, every day? And that's not enough for you? And I also heard that somebody said they like to be able to go swimming in the summertime. And I said, well, it will still be tidal twice a day. So it's not like you wouldn't be able to. And, you know, those are a couple of the things that have been brought up. There was somebody who brought up a question about whether it would impact the clam flats. And my response was, not in a bad way. Removal of the dam would not impact the clam flats in a bad way. It would probably be beneficial. But, you know, those are some of the issues that were brought up.
Yeah, change is hard.
Yes, it is.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Just want to say great meeting and thanks. It's fun talking to everybody.
Thank you,
I
Martha.
agree.
Great seeing you. A lot of you I haven't seen in a long time, so.
Hi.
We'll be
Thank all
having
of you.
another presentation
Thank you.
tomorrow for our Greenscapes Coalition. So Greenscapes 101, which goes over the basics of what greenscaping is. You can see my background here. This would be a beautiful natural lawn that has clover and violets and probably a lot of crabgrass, but it's gorgeous. And we're trying to convince people that if you have to have a lawn, at least have a pretty interesting lawn. So you can join that. We will have 3 experts with us, some that you may know well, but it'll be great. And you'll learn a lot about how people can, during this time of separation, still collectively work together to help protect water. And get
So
outside.
what time is that on?
That is 4 o'clock tomorrow. You can RSVP through our website, or you can send an email RSVPing it to irwainfo@ipswichriver.org.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks to everybody, and stay tuned, and we need you, and best of luck over the next few weeks while we're all forced indoors. It's
Great meeting, Wayne.
great to see everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you do.
Hey.
Bye-bye.
Rachel, great job.
Bye.